Well, data from the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development suggests America is not the only country in the world dealing with crippling childcare costs. The OECD found that worldwide, families spend almost $5,000 a year per child for ages 0 to 5. Now, those figures vary widely, though, but in particular, couples in the UK and New Zealand spent more than a quarter of their income on childcare in 2019. Now, that's the highest of any developed nation. And families bear the brunt of those costs. OECD countries only spend around 0.7% of their GDPs on early childhood education and care. Well, joining me now to discuss the global childcare crisis is Ariane Hegewisch, Senior Research Fellow at the Institute for Women's Policy Research. Ariane, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for covering this important issue.
Indeed. So how did we get to this point where U.S. childcare is so expensive that it rivals a college education in some cases?
Yes, it's very interesting. The last time Congress passed a bill, and both chambers passed it, to have universal childcare was in the 1970s. And since then, we have had a hodgepodge of solutions. I think there are two reasons. One is that we do have a market for childcare, so people have to pay a lot for it, but some families at least can find childcare. The other issue is that there has been very little appetite for seeing childcare as an investment and hence paying the taxes, the upfront cost, to ensure that the economy grows and benefits from it further on.
Now, one of the experts we just heard from, she mentioned that other nations subsidize these services, but what are some of the other factors that make childcare such a big chunk of household incomes?
The lack of investment. I mean, firstly, I should say we do have childcare here in the sense that school is childcare, at least in most states, from 5 years onwards. And it covers at least 2/3 of the day, which is much better than in a lot of other high-income countries. But, those really time-intensive and labor-intensive early years are only very rudimentary covered. And the problem almost has been that it has been linked to welfare, to saying, okay, we want to get people to work. It's for people who are staying at home, maybe are it's almost seen as, wasting time to look after your child if you are poor and you saying, my child needs care, and I would prefer not to take a poorly paid job in a retail shop or something, but rather provide the care myself. It's very hard to do that. So it's linked to welfare, it's linked to pushing people into employment, and there isn't a general coalition to raise the funds that are necessary to get quality care for all.
So then let's talk domino effects. What are the consequences of this system staying the same, of childcare expenses either staying this high or rising? What does that mean in terms of willingness to have children or even career prospects?
Yes, so that is the big question. We know that because of the cost of childcare, women are less likely, and it's more women than men, to accept promotions. They're more likely to look to work near the home. Some women choose or have the ability not to work for a while, but most families have to have both parents, or if there's only one parent, that one parent in the labor market. So that kind of choice to provide the home the care yourself, most families don't have, which means you have to compromise. You might have to choose care that you don't really think is good quality, or you have to rely on friends and family, which sometimes isn't very reliable, and grandmothers, more grandmothers work now. So it's a real juggling act, and children are also the victims in that, because they don't get quality early education and they suffer longer term down the line when they grow up.
And that really is key. So what do we know then so far about the Biden administration's proposal for childcare and how far it goes to meet today's needs?
So it has already started. The COVID rescue plans have included investment in childcare to try and rebuild what was destroyed and address the higher costs that came from COVID because of hygiene, having fewer kids, and so on. And also in the rescue package, there is a childcare credit, which is something like $3,000 per child and slightly higher for younger children. So that gives parents a bit more options. At the moment, it is time limited, but it may set and trade more resources. And then there is the ambition to add 2 years of pre-K from 3 years to 5 years, the years that aren't fully covered by school, to ensure that children get that. And I hope there will be a coalition for those. And there's also more thoughts on providing subsidies for those early expensive years. So, the current political environment in the United States, as well as it's unclear what will get through or not, but childcare does seem to be a popular issue, and the COVID crisis really has put it on the agenda. There was a crisis before,
right.
But when schools closed and childcare centers closed, people really noticed that this is something essential for our economy.
It certainly was a wake-up call for a lot of people. Thank you so much. Ariane Hegewisch there, Senior Research Fellow at the Institute for Women's Policy Research.